Now, and welcome here, Julian and Adeline from Light Detectors, who have a nice presentation for us about light detectors and the activities. So, hello and welcome. I really appreciate you coming. And we can start the presentation, and perhaps you can introduce yourselves and what you do in light detectors.
Very good. Okay. Hi. Thanks very much, Asi, for the invitation and the introduction, and thanks everybody for coming here. I can see we're more than 120 participants from Serbia, Macedonia, Turkey, Tunisia, Slovenia, goodness, Greece and Croatia, Italy, Poland, and Germany. That's really impressive. This is the first time that we're doing an eTwinning webinar, so I hope that you'll get something out of it. What we're going to do today, we've got an hour, and what we're going to do is we're going to tell you, just going to tell you a little bit of what we'll do with the hour. So first of all, we're going to tell you about our own project so that you know who we are and what we actually do and why we do it. Um, and then we want to know a little bit about, how your own news consumption online works so that we can actually use that as a launching pad for talking about how to start the conversation about digital news consumption and disinformation online with your classrooms. I can't see from your logins what ages you teach, but our target groups are 10 to 11 and 14 to 15. So we've broadly said 10 to 16, and I hope that's going to be useful for you. We'll also work on some actual examples of news that might or might not be true, and how to actually decipher that, how you can use that in your own classroom. Um, we'll also talk about what tools there are for checking sources and checking facts, checking pictures. This is what we call the lie detectors toolkit, which we haven't made up. It's all stuff that's already out there and available for you. Then we'll talk a little bit about how to integrate source literacy and verification into your own teaching routines, if that's what you want to do, and we hope that's what you want to do. And how to engage students, really, how to avoid what we call fake fatigue.
Yeah, here we can see how all the
Oh, great.
students
Oh,
is.
fabulous.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Excellent. Okay, great. Well, these are, no, that's wonderful. We can see the age groups that you're teaching. Yeah, wonderful. So it's really the people the kids that we talk to as well. Um, and really, we want to maybe give you a few clues just from our own experience of how to make this stick with the kids. Obviously, all children are different, all young people are different, all classrooms are different. We're not teachers ourselves, but we often come in contact with teachers like you, and we know that you play an enormous role in the problem of online disinformation. And that's what we'll talk about. So we talk a little bit about, first of all, what our project is about. Let's have a look. Yeah. Well, let's hope that we have the answers for you. Your comments are very good already. Okay, so um, first of all, I'm Juliana von Reppert-Bismarck, and I'm the founder and director of a non-profit called Lie Detectors, which is based in Brussels.
And I am Eileen, and I'm in charge for the coordination of the program in Belgium.
Yeah, and Adeline's actually also been doing an awful lot of our technical development so that we can actually share with you and share, the visuals that we have and make things very accessible, which is really important because um, actually being able to interact with teachers is massively important in what we do. So what we do is we're a non-profit. We're based in Belgium. We're led by journalists, and we're really driven by we're philanthropically funded. We take no money from the platforms. We've decided to take no money from Google or from Facebook. That was very important to us right from the beginning, because we thought that there is still a question about the relationship between disinformation and the role that the social media plays in it and in its dissemination. Um, we are active in Germany, Belgium, and Austria. And the idea is that we're going to be active across the European Union. So we see the countries that you come from. We are in Germany already, but not in any of the other countries, but hopefully we will be soon. I can see that some of your students are 8 years old. We don't actually deal with kids aged 8 yet, but we're getting more and more requests to do that because it does seem to be a really important issue at a
Yeah.
younger and younger age. So why do we do what we do? Basically, we start with a very negative outlook, really. It's really quite pessimistic. And we say, you know, yes, there are a lot of fact-checking sites out there, and the social media platforms are doing a lot, and governments are doing more and more to try and root this out. But fakes and disinformation is becoming so sophisticated, and it's becoming very cleverly spliced, where things get spliced between fact and fiction. It's really getting more and more difficult for fact checkers and moderators, online moderators, to root out online content that is incorrect and that is manipulative. If you have been following what Facebook has been saying, Mark Zuckerberg has been talking about the digital living room. This is something we've been worrying about for a really long time, which is when disinformation travels not on big sites that we can actually monitor, like Facebook or Twitter,
Yeah, that's fairly open.
or news sites or websites, but actually when it goes underground and travels on WhatsApp and Snapchat, on TikTok, which I hadn't even heard about until a few months ago, which is a Chinese-based chat site, social media platform. And we worry also about the increasing attacks on the credibility of the press. We worry about the fact that when children do know how to check facts, they might actually not believe what they read anymore. We worry not just about European elections, which are coming up, but also about the slow dripping of disinformation into the minds of young people at a younger and younger age, and very quiet pace that hollows out the centrist debate, that polarizes, and that leaves very little space for what we call our precious democracy. I don't know what you think about that, but that's what we think anyway. So and then we also worry very much about how you teachers are equipped to deal with this. It's such a new space. The online space is really unknown. The way young people interact online is completely different to the way we do. How does one actually integrate that? What kind of support do you have? Do you even feel equipped? We very often go into classrooms where teachers say, I don't know how to talk to my children about this because they are living in another world. So what we do to deal with this very pessimistic view is very simply, we select and we train journalists, professional journalists, working journalists, to with a script that's been developed with children, hundreds of children, and with teachers like yourselves, and psychologists, and we send them into classrooms to talk to children aged 10 and 11 and 14 and 15 about two things. First of all, disinformation, the manipulative content that's been put online, how you find it, why it's there, why one should care. This is ever more important to make it obvious to young people that it's actually important to care about this stuff. To us, it's probably obvious, but we have some of the adolescents in particular who can say, well, it's all fake anyway, and we don't care. And we see that as a really big threat. All right, you've been reading the feedback forms.
When it's happening, you understand that you have to redirect your effort to that specific part. There is no need to talk if they don't hear you, and they don't take the time to actually realize that it's important for their personal lives as well. So this is really the point we're trying sometimes to get across as well, that it's important, but why is it important to your students in particular? And we have to get that message across to them personally.
Yeah, what we also really want to make obvious when we go into classrooms, and obviously we're not going into classrooms in most of your countries, but we really try and let teachers understand, teachers like you, that it's actually not such a difficult topic of conversation, and that there are ways of entering the conversation, and that it's relevant to all of you. I don't know either what kind of what you actually teach, but we go into classrooms with literature and politics teachers and general teachers in primary schools. Civics, all sorts of things.
But also science, and it's relevant. In the end, you can you can see that it's relevant for any field of school teaching, I think, and
Yeah.
that's also the point. It's that it's not only relevant to an IT teacher that would be doing that on the side, and that like critical thinking can be applied to any field you can think of in the end, and that's really something important.
Exactly. So here's what we found. Oh, and by the way, the journalists also find there's an important thing for the journalists as well, because part of what we also talk about is how journalism can be fallible. And we think this is a really important issue to point out, which is that journalists don't hold all of the truth. We may be professionally trained to seek out the truth, but we have constraints like time, like money, like resources, like space, like our readers' expectations and our viewers' expectations. And we really want to transmit that to the kids. And through interactive games, we actually make them experience how easy it is to present a one-sided view of reality, even with the best of intentions. And what we're trying to really convey with that is that there are the fakes on the one hand, which seek to manipulate and distort and exert some kind of influence over the population, over voters, and over economics as well. And then there is journalism, which may not always be perfect, but it's out there trying to actually inform. That's, and at its basis, that's what it's actually trying to do.
And that it's also there that journalists are accountable, and if a mistake is made, there is actually a system in place to make sure that this is that this is actually discussed, and it's not the case with any manipulation. And we need to have the conversation with the students to make sure that they understand that there is this difference between this error that can be actually um, 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 how do you say that can be held accountable,
Yeah.
and then there is a manipulation that will not be held accountable, and that is actually malicious and harmful, and that there is a difference between the two.
Exactly. And understanding the difference and understanding that it's important to know the difference is actually one of the most important points we try to bring across. We hope one day not to have to do this anymore. We hope that one day all teachers will be like you. All teachers will actually be wanting and thirsting to know about this stuff and wanting to become educated. We hope that this kind of source verification, fact verification will actually just become one more literacy that becomes a completely normal part of teaching, whether it's teaching maths or physics or science or politics or ethics or anything like that. So our aim in the end is to be able to close shop and for you guys to do it all. But in the meantime, apparently we've got a few things that we want to tell you. So we found from the classroom sessions that we've gone into that the response is very good. The kids really love talking about this stuff. Even the adolescents, who can be a little bit more difficult, we find that this is not something that breaks down along class divides. We find that all children are vulnerable to disinformation. We find that the actual contact with journalists is a really beneficial thing, and that teachers also find it very positive. We also find, and I think I've said this before, that teachers very often say that they feel ill-equipped to talk about this, which is a real shame and one that can easily be remedied. So what should we say? I'm going to show you a very short video, and then we're going to get on with actually showing you a little bit of how to crack the nut of disinformation in the classroom.
So I'll try to switch to my own screen to show you what we've been doing in 2018 about this. So I'll try to see if this works. I share my screen. Yep, desktop, share. Oops. I think you see it now, so we'll try to see if this is working. So
I can't actually see. I should probably look into it. Right, are we back? Does it work? Okay, I hope you were able to see this.
Yeah, I think we work.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, good. I think we're back. Can you see us? Can you hear us?
Yeah, you said.
Okay, very good. Excellent, very good. So we're back. Oh. So actually, the next thing we want to talk about before we start talking about how you will broach this with children in the classroom, and when I say children, I also mean adolescents, is we want to find out a little bit about how digital your own news consumption is, and we're going to compare this with a group of students whose data we analysed very, very recently. They're actually German students, but if you please click on the link that you see right now, the one that says easypolls.net. If you click on that link,
it's also in the chat.
Oh, it's also in the chat.
Yeah.
Excellent. If you can please click on that link and then tell us very honestly which ones of the social media platforms that you see listed there you use, and click on all the ones that apply. We're going to give you, I don't know, 30 seconds to just click on them. I hope it's working. So you can see that it should say what social media you use. YouTube, WhatsApp, Instagram, Snapchat. There we go. Okay, that's filling up nicely. We'll give it a little bit more time. Got 22 voters at the moment. You can all get involved. There's no right or wrong answer. It'll actually just be really useful to compare this with what we normally see. Because what's actually quite surprising is that very often the way young people use social media is completely different to the way teachers use social media, to the way we use social media, probably. And to be in order to be able to start a conversation, you actually first need to know what it is they're doing online. Where are they? And you cannot actually take anything for granted. You might even find that if you ask about news consumption, some of the children in classrooms will not actually have seen a newspaper. You may still read your news in a newspaper, but they may not actually ever have seen one in their homes. So this is something
only online as well.
Yeah. Exactly, or they may not actually know the difference. We had one journalist who went into a classroom in Vienna and asked the children to say what they thought a journalist was, and one of the 14-year-olds said, "You're one of the people who stands on a street corner in a yellow jacket selling the tabloid with the adverts in it." So, okay, I think, what do we think?
I think it's good now. So we'll switch to the results?
Yeah, let's go and switch to the results.
So I will again switch to our screen so that we can see that together, all right? So I'll share the screen. Okay. And we're back here.
Okay.
So I will just update it one more time to see if we have all the results. 42 voters.
Okay, that's a third of you. I guess that's
I think that's pretty enough.
Okay, good enough. Okay, so right, so can you see it yourselves? I don't know whether you can see it yourselves.
They see this
you can see the screen. Okay, fabulous. So what you can see is that most of you, that more than a quarter of you, are on Facebook. You're also on YouTube and WhatsApp. Not so much on Snapchat. 12% of you are on Twitter. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to compare this. Also bear in mind, please, when you're looking at this, because I'm going to talk about this, is how many of these platforms are you actually on? I can see that 42 of you have voted, and there's a total number of clicks, which is 132, which means that you've each clicked about 3 on average, 3.5 media apps, social media apps on average. So how does it compare with what the kids that we talked to in Germany recently told us?
We can go back to our screen actually, or a presentation, sorry. Perfect. And we get back to see the numbers.
Yeah,
it's in German, right there.
Sorry, it might take a moment to have them. Yeah, we hear you, but it might take a moment to get the presentation.
Yes.
So
there we go. Great. So as you can see on the top, here's our sample of 348 students aged 10 to 11. You can see that Massive amounts of them are on YouTube. And in fact, you can see that both of the ones, you see the top one is for 10 and 11-year-olds, the bottom one is for 14 and 15-year-olds. They're all on YouTube, they're all on WhatsApp, they're all on Instagram. Very few of them are actually on Facebook or on Twitter. And the amount of students that are on the other apps, that just showed that there was the TikTok app, which we hadn't even thought of asking about, because these things are springing up all the time. So what's interesting also about this is that, let me just get this right, that when we asked them, when we actually did the count of how many social media apps they're on, it's not just that they're mainly on YouTube and therefore ever more focused on visual content rather than text content, which is something we just can no longer just ignore. They're really much more visually literate than textually literate, from what the journalists have said that they go into the classrooms, but also how many platforms they're on. So among the kids aged 14 to 15, more than half of them were on either 4 or 5 different platforms. And 67% were on 4 platforms or more. And among the 10 and 11-year-olds, more than half were on 2 or 3 platforms, and 59% were on 3 platforms and more. So I don't know if that's surprising to you, but it does seem to have been surprising to some of the teachers into whose classrooms we went. And so this is very important, because it shows that kids are getting their information from in a very different way from the way we used to get our information. And if you want to talk about consuming news and consuming information, then you have to bear that in mind. So to start a conversation, now we're really going to move a little bit about how to start a conversation about this in your classroom. You really need to understand how the kids' digital habits are maybe different from your own habits. And you're best served to actually really just ask them the question right from the get-go, before you start delving into, telling them how to be careful. Actually, is to understand where they're at. And we find that actually from one classroom to another, this can actually vary quite a lot. And to not be afraid of the difference in news consumption, because in the end, we're talking about facts. We're talking about not being duped. We're talking about people not wanting to be lied to. People. This is actually very elemental things. Where the information comes from, what platform the information comes from, makes it very, it's relevant in order to be able to actually speak their language a little bit. But in the end, you're talking about really fundamental and basic things, and so it's not really something to be afraid of. So we get a lot of questions from the teachers about how to talk about disinformation in the classroom, and we are going to come up with 6 different points that we've kind of identified of how to broach this issue, which can be very tricky, because you don't want to scare kids either, right? You don't want to make them afraid of everything that they read or see online. So our 6 very quick points are: don't assume anything about your classroom. Don't assume that you know where they're getting their information from. They could be...
for instance, for the 14-year-olds that we have seen before, 50% of them answered that they got it from somewhere else, other. And we don't know what other is, actually. It might be TikTok, surely TikTok, but other can be the newest thing that we don't know anything about yet. So it's really important to assume nothing about where they get that from.
And so there's a question here from Daniela Bonaire saying, what other platforms have the teachers referred to? This is it. We've talked about TikTok, there's fandom websites, there's all sorts of things that we don't even...
WeChat, I think, as well.
Yeah.
So this is something that even as...
And this is what makes flexing the critical muscle and teaching kids how to actually be source literate and actually checking whether things are true or not so important. Because if you think about that, a lot of these conversations and a lot of the information is being shared on media platforms like little private groups like WhatsApp and Snapchat, which cannot be traced, which are encrypted, thank God. That just means that it's really, really important for them to actually know how to drive in this how to navigate this universe. Okay, so the next thing is, ask open questions. Let them answer. One of the most amazing things that we find especially when we talk to kids aged 10 and 11, is if we let them come up with their own words to describe fake news and disinformation. If we don't come and say this is propaganda, this is manipulation, if we don't come and dump all these big adult words on them, but actually ask them, and you know this much better than we do because you do this every day. But we find that they come up with really interesting words. So the young children these days, sure, they talk about fake news, but often they'll also use different words. They'll use revenge, or they'll use
simply lies as well.
Lies.
It's from their perspective, there are many other labels that are applying actually to that.
A lot of them talk about bullying, cyberbullying. The boys, funnily enough, always know that you can make a lot of money, and that this is a money-making venture, and that they call it clickbait, and then they have to often tell the whole classroom what clickbait actually is. And when you think about it, that very innate understanding that kids have, because face it, they all want to be YouTubers. They don't want to be footballers anymore or pop stars or
influencers on Instagram.
Yeah, they all want to be YouTubers, so they understand that you can make a lot of money by making sensationalist claims online. They also understand that, via a quick photo that they send around on Instagram or Snapchat, they can influence how people see them and their friends and their enemies and their frenemies from day to day. And that combination of influencing perceptions and making money is really what lies behind disinformation. So if you let the kids come up with their own words and their own motives for putting fakes online, then you find that they actually already have. They've got this unbelievably natural, instinctive.
Instinctive.
Yeah,
I'd say.
And it's not frightening to them if you start talking to them about it in their words and let them come up with their own words and their own experience of it. Then you'll see that they already have experience of it, and all that we're doing in our work is we're kind of directing their gaze from their digital playground to the world of information and news, and whatever your subject might be that you're teaching. Don't be afraid of the digital gap. And we've already said that a little bit. They are interested, they're fascinated by this, and nobody talks to them about it from the adult world. Keep it light. It doesn't always have to be about politics. We're going to show you a couple of examples. We try very, very hard not to get stuck in refugee policy and religious tolerance and things like that, which is very, very important, but it just makes it so dry and adult again. So very often we try and work with very light examples that work in many different ways that make it relevant, and that are perfectly good starting points for starting important conversations. What else? Get them involved, get them solving the riddles. They love it. If you give them some tools to work with.
Yeah, exactly. The little games, the interaction is really the key when they, because then they start to actually say it's okay to give my meaning, it's okay to give my opinion. If it's light and if it's in the form of a game, then you have better chance to make them talk and make them participate.
Yeah, there's a brilliant comment right here from Anna Maria saying it has to be like a game. That's exactly what we say. We say it needs to be fun. We're never going to get rid of it. We mustn't make it heavy. When it gets heavy, they turn off. You all know this, right? But we worry a lot about this fake fatigue. It's like climate fatigue, like climate change is inevitable, so I can't do anything about it anyway, therefore I don't want to read about it anymore, and I'm going to buy myself a Land Rover or something like that, right? The idea being you make it fun, you make it easy, you make it into this critical thinking, you make it into a muscle that they can flex regardless of their political convictions or the political convictions that they hear in different places, and something that they can really train very neutrally and independently. And yes, exactly. And that goes hand in hand with empowering them, and not scaring them. Because the last thing you want to do is scare them. You want to actually make them feel that this is something that they can do something about. Okay.
And that there are actually tools out there that they don't know about, but that we can bring to them so that they can make their own decisions according to with a clear decision, actually, an educated decision about this, and not only just a decision because they have to pick one, true or false, or true or fake. I'll pick one. No, you can use that tool, that method to make sure that you're actually not being duped and that you can make a decision being empowered.
Exactly.
That's really
Yeah.
Yeah, without shocking them as
Yeah,
well,
not
indeed.
shocking them. And with a game format, we're going to show you a couple of examples afterwards as well. And you can ask us. We have a gigantic resource of things online, and they exist already. There are many, many brilliant games online. We'll show you a couple later on. And now, what is our next? Oh, okay, so before showing it, I don't want to give them too much time to look at them. Adeline is going to show you 3 examples that we often put to the kids, and then you can vote. We're not going to have a poll this time, but you can either vote in your heads, or you can, if you dare, you can write it in the chat box. I'm going to show you 3 examples.
Yeah, so actually, we would like you to tell us which ones are right, fake, or true, and we can see later on what are the results, whether you got into you're trapped or not. So we can have a look at it first. I mean, maybe I will go through it with you. So the first of all is an article about a man in Indonesia, I think Southeast Asia here, and this man was with his girlfriend. His girlfriend died, and he met a snake, a 10 feet cobra actually, and he believes this is his girlfriend that is reincarnated, and he married the cobra. So is this true? Is this fake? We would like to see that from you.
Okay, next one.
And then maybe next one, yes. So this is another article that was circulating quite a lot about the Pope Francis that backed Donald Trump for his candidacy as President of the United States, and that released a statement about why it's important to vote for him.
Okay,
And then the next one is an article, or actually a tweet this time, about this shark that was released during Hurricane Harvey in Houston, in Texas, because of the flood, and then the shark actually managed to get on the road in Houston. So those are our 3 examples. We'd like to see whether which ones are the fake ones and which ones are the right ones.
Oh, Meg, you're too good. Okay.
I don't know. There's
No, that's it. Okay, well, actually, they're all fake, as you all said.
Damn it. Tried.
But students, yes, question from one of you, do students believe that they're true? You would be amazed at how many people believe, particularly the story about the cobra. And they really present wonderful starting points. As you can see, oops, hang on, how do I get back here? This Trump one is probably the one that is most political, but you can also treat it in a very non-political way, because it's actually a satire website and you can talk about the satire. But this Cobra story just goes and goes, and you can make it become relevant in many different ways. You can make it relevant in terms of what happens if you what happens with clickbait. You know, what kind of money are you giving to the people putting the story about? How viral does it go? What kind of image does it portray of this particular man, or the cultures that believe in reincarnation? You can talk about the quality of different newspapers. This particular one is from the Daily Mail, and you can actually make this very relevant to the kids, because there are many articles when you decipher this, when you debunk the story, you can see that the man was actually individually really badly affected by this story. The story went around the world. It was translated into many languages, and this man suffered as an individual. And then you can also see how serious journalism actually works to correct stories like that. So if you were in a classroom, and then we'll also have a look at, by the way, we'll look at this the shark story in a minute as well, because that's important to think when you think about how children actually are more and more consuming information via photos and videos. But first, if you were to talk about these in the classroom, how would you debunk them? Now, what we call the lie detectors toolkit, there's many ways. There's enormous amounts of resources and many lists and many checklists. And the one that we like to use is from something that's called the International Federation of Librarian Associations. And it's very simple. You'd be amazed at how simple this is, but these are actually things that kids don't necessarily think about. Consider the source. Kids often think that anything that's on Instagram or comes from their friends must be true. Not all of them, obviously, but so ask them, consider the source, look at somewhere else, read beyond the headline, check the author. Who's the author? Who's writing this? And why are they even a real person? And this can actually become quite interesting detective work that they enjoy doing. Do a Google search. Are there other supporting sources that say this? Check the date. A lot of the stories that get put out, like the shark story that we'll see, has been used again. Is it a joke? That's important, because how do jokes work? Are all jokes bad? No, of course they're not all bad, but some of them can actually take on a life of their own. And one of the more interesting points that we like to discuss with the kids is check your own biases. Are you believing this story because you want it to be true? And that's that you can, as simple and basic as this particular toolkit is, this checklist from the International Federation of Library Associations, checking your own biases is actually an issue that you can discuss with your kids. If you're a biology teacher, you can talk about the anti-vaxxers. It's absolutely fascinating. And finally, if you're more technically minded, then check the picture, and do a reverse image search. Let's see. What should we do? Should we do
first maybe the cover?
Yeah. Let's do cover.
So it's just one of the exercise we also do with the journalists in the classroom. So once we make them vote, and then they raise their hands, and then you see that some of them, they're changing their mind, and then they're saying, "Oh, I knew about it. I knew it was fake. I voted because my friend, la la la, voted as well." And then we really have to make this very clear that it's all fake, because one moment of inattention and it might be taken as a real fact. So what we usually do is then we use the checklist that we just presented to you. And for instance, for the snake, we could the story of the snake, we can clearly say, just do a Google search, and then, did the man marry the snake? And then first thing is indeed the article, the original article, but then the second thing is, no, we didn't. And so it's a very simple thing that actually the kids enjoy doing, like just going, as Julian said, as a detective, finding out the truth. This can be very playful for them, and it's actually very easy. And then with the second article you check, boom, no, it's a fact-checking website, and you can clearly say what are the facts. And for instance, that this Malaysian person was actually kind of bullied a bit because the story was everywhere around. So it can be a very simple exercise. Just check other supporting sources, check the dates, because it has been around for years as well. And yes, verify your own bias. Why do you think that this Malaysian man would marry a snake? Why do you think that it would be allowed in Malaysia to marry animals, and this kind of things? It's also a great reflection and great discussion to have with them. No, there are other cases that are a bit more complex, but it's great as well for kids that are a bit older and maybe more experienced in that.
And they will love this. If you do ever show them, if you talk about the other points, check your bias, check your sources, think about the date and things like that. That's all kind of investigation that we know that, if you're teaching history or you're teaching ethics or literature or anything, you can use those. But if you want to do something slightly more technical, then do a reverse image search for them, and they'll love it, because it's actually something that they really are very, very into photos and videos these days. And here's a nice way of checking one of the fakes.
They're also really interested in technology and this kind of stuff. So whatever image that is online can actually be traced back to its source. So the first publication of this image online. So we can do that for this tweet. So by either entering, so we did that on the presentation so that it would be easier. So you can go it on, you can do this on Google search, but also on website like TinEye. So Google search, you have this little search icon with the zoom, but you can also have this. Also have this camera icon, and the camera icon is to do this reverse image search. So you either upload your image that you've saved on your computer before, or just click enter the image URL if you have it. And then what's happening after that is that either Google or TinEye here in this case can give you all the results of where this image is on the internet. So here you, for the shark, for instance, if you do the exercise, you can see that it has been online for 800 times. And actually, if you can even sort the results by date of publication, you can see that it was already online in 2012. Well, this tweet and Hurricane Harvey was in 2017. So there is already a bit of a problem there. How can this picture be on 2012 and then in 2017? And this is something kids would love to investigate. And then you can go back as well that it was actually on Twitter already in Jersey this time, and not in Houston, sorry, in 2012. It was also in North Myrtle Beach in 2015. So by doing this exercise with kids, you can clearly get, okay, you can clearly get this message across. You're getting duped now if you think that something that was already online in 2012 is now in 2017 a fact. So this is something very interesting to see as well, is that you can check, and I can maybe give you that link on the chat. The original picture is actually one from the National Geographic. It's a photographer that has been searching for this shark for a long time and to actually get that picture. I know it's reused and reused every year, every month on every publication, as if this shark was wandering around all over the planet, while it took quite a while for him to get that picture. So it's quite ironic, and I can even give you now the link to that story, so that if you want to redo that with your students, you can do it as well. And so this can be done with any picture, either on Google Image, so the icon with the camera, or on this website that is called tineye.com. I'll also maybe type it here so that you can get it. I'm sure we can give you all those links after the session so that you get a collection of everything that we discussed about, because there are lots about this. And yeah, actually you can do that. Maybe you want to talk about it?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there's also lots of, so here on this page, you're going to see all the verification sites that currently are active, and there's an awful lot of them, and you can find wonderful examples. If you want to start talking about this, go onto any of these verification sites. The German ones, unfortunately, tend to be more political. They have not cottoned on quite as much yet to the fact that it's a good idea also to fact check the lighter stories. But fact check has been around for a really long time. I think this is missing Snopes. Snopes was the very first verification site that ever existed, just after, I think it was oh no, factcheck.org was the first one. Snopes is also extremely good. There's some UK ones that are very good. Unfortunately, some of these verification sites only have limited funds, and so they're not always active. Sometimes they're more active around election time. So always check. The French are very, Le Décodeur is very good in France. Crosscheck is very good. It's a really interesting initiative that is a combination of, I believe, British and French journalists, and I think there might be other countries involved now as well.
There are other, yeah, in the next slide we have other languages, but maybe I can pile up something for you, and then after the presentation we can give you all those links.
Yeah,
because it exists in every language, in every almost every country.
But you
So
can also see that it takes a lot of effort and time to fact check, and so therefore not everyone, not all, the Anglosphere, the English language world is much better equipped. It just is because of the prevalence of English language in the world. But there are resources in your.
It is true as well that on social media, most of the things, even if, of course, a kid at 10 doesn't speak English, but the visuals that he sees, and often, and I see someone said that before, they check the title only, and so this they can decipher title, an image, and then they take it for true or fake. We don't know. Actually, those verification sites, even in English, are useful in at that moment because they can give an explanation, and with a little bit of guidance, it would be fairly easy to use, I think,
Yeah.
for all the English-speaking fakes that are actually translated and circulating everywhere.
And then we were talking about games. There's also some wonderful games out there. Oh, I'm actually going to go one further ahead. There's brilliant games out there. So one of the really great ones that's currently being translated into 7 different languages is a game called Get Bad News, which makes complete fun of fake news, because what they do is they encourage kids to put fake news online, and the worse the fake news is, and the more violent, not violent, but the more sort of bad it is, the more points you get. I don't mean violent in terms of physical violence. I just mean sort of, just how awful can you get? How bad can you put a spin on it? And then they actually go online. They actually post these fakes online, and anyone who clicks on them gets a flash on their website that says, aha, you've been fooled by a 12-year-old, which is wonderful because it just increases the reach. It shows a kid how easy it is to do fake news. It makes them very familiar with it. It actually makes them so familiar with it so that they understand to be careful themselves, and it actually goes beyond and goes out into the world, and shows maybe older people as well, that there's fake news out there, and that young people can dupe them, which surely must be a way of making them want to be more literate themselves as well. There's another game. This one's great. This one's called Factitious, which is from a university, a US university. Actually, I forget which university it was. Unfortunately, it only exists in English at the moment, but this is really great. It's just a lovely quiz which you can actually just leave your kids. If you wanted to, you could just get your kids to play it, or you could work through it with the kids, and often it'll tell you why. If you can see here in the right hand pane where it says correct, can you tell Mozart outsold Beyonce, correct? And then often when you click on the continue, which we can't do on this presentation, but if you were to click on continue, it would actually give you quite a long description of how to tell a fake from a true story, and how to check whether a news source is actually reliable or not. So this is actually a really nice little resource. I want to go back. We've had so many questions from teachers about what to be done, is that we actually put together a PDF. It's 70 pages long. That's 70 pages long. It's currently mainly in German because the wonderful journalist that put it together for us wrote it in German, but actually some of it is in English.
Yeah.
And we've just put the first page here, so you can see there's enormous amounts of really wonderful resources out there from the OECD, from UNESCO. They can be slightly tricky to read, but for instance, the News Literacy Project, I don't know if you can read this, it's a little bit small, but 1, 2, 3. So First Draft News, they do great stuff. ARV do wonderful things. UNESCO is a little bit harder to decipher, but they're very good. They have entire teaching curricula. The
And it's
News
translated as well, UNESCO, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, that exists in lots of different languages. There's all sorts of things, Deutsche Welle Academy, and a lot of them work not only on verification tools, but also just on news literacy, actually understanding how journalism is supposed to work. We ourselves, however, have found that teachers like you don't always have the time to read this sort of thing, and very often we will send out our 70-page PDF via a WeTransfer link, which, by the way, we could. No, it's in German. I don't think we should send it to you guys. But when we have it in English, we'd like to send it to you if you wanted to. Maybe we can find a way of being in touch with you. But what we find is that a lot of teachers actually don't even open this. It's too much. It's too dense. So what we're doing at the moment, what we're trying to do at the moment is,
Yeah, that's another French
oh,
game,
there's
but
another
you
French, the
can
French
just
game.
it's a
Oh,
it's a bit more about news literacy, so not only debunking fake and true, but also trying to understand what is journalism and why can you trust a journalist maybe better than anybody on the internet. And so because information is made in such a way that it's verified, that it's that you can trust it better, and that even if there are errors, as I said, it's accountable, etc., etc. So to make understand the process of how to create information is actually also an important, an important message next to okay, this is not only always right on the internet.
yeah. So what we're putting together is we're putting together something that we call the lie detectors toolkit again, and here we're trying to, and we'd love to test this on you once it's actually really ready and ready to go. We've sorted everything by age group, by the amount of time it takes, by whether you need to be online, you know, what kind of tools you need, how difficult it is, where it's from, and also with important information. And then also we've divided it into games and exercises on news literacy, on source verification, and then also on more. So for instance, on games here, you'd be able to just decide, well, if you have between 5 and 30 minutes at the end of your teaching day, you might want to actually um, uh, let the kids play a quiz. Or if you had kids that are 14 to 15 years old, you might want to use the left-hand one, although that one's in German. And what we try and do is we try and warn you, you know, if there's any kind of religious content or, you know, contentious content or anything or any swear words or whatever, so that it's very easy to use. Let's have a look. We do the same with exercises. The left hand one shows you actually how to detect a bot. The right hand one is actually the checklist that we just showed you the other day. And then we also have an awful lot of these are very, very long lists of contents and teaching modules that have already been made, really to make this as accessible and as easy to use as possible. Okay, I'm just going to skip forward a little bit. Oh yeah, okay, so but basically, so the main thing about it really is you can make this relevant to your own subject. I just saw something that said we can't be experts in everything. No, of course not.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
you know, you can make this relevant. There are games about vaccination conspiracy theories. There's a wonderful one by MIT. If you are a politics teacher, there's a wonderful NGO called Factabari, which has got a module for teaching political literacy. There's something called Mind Over Media. If you're a history teacher, there's something called Mind Over Media, which does an awful lot of Holocaust work to counter the increasing amount of Holocaust denial that's springing up again. So you can make this relevant to your subject, and there are materials out there for you. How to make it stick, how to make it not boring. Again, we're just going to reiterate a little bit what we said before. Give them the tools, let them play with the tools themselves, let them make them, you know, let them work on their own WhatsApp or Snapchat things that they found. Make it light, it doesn't need to be political. And not everything is harmful. This is one of the big things that we really want to say. You can't check everything. There's so much information out there. If we expect everybody to check everything, we'll be exhausted by lunchtime. And so we also, if you look on the top right hand, there's two bubbles. This is actually something that you could spend a whole classroom session talking about. The difference between misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation is one that if you put that into a Google search, you'll find fabulous teaching resources, which will help you talk about the difference between manipulation and error, journalistic error, for instance. Exactly. Pick your battles. You can't check everything.
Yeah, it makes me think someone in the chat earlier was saying that they only read the pictures and that they share they only read the titles and the picture and then they share immediately, and it's difficult to indeed pick your the topic you want to discuss with them. And indeed, that's the thing, you cannot check everything and you cannot ask them check everything and make sure that everything, verify all information. You cannot do that realistically. It's a bit too difficult. So that's really important to say, okay, we're going to discuss one and then try to broaden the subject. And then mostly maybe the next point is also very important, is to
slow down.
Simply slow down. So if they're reading only the title and the picture, and then they share, you can also the important message for them is then like, slow down. Don't you want to read more about it? Don't you want to check a bit the author, Google a bit what's happening, saying where this image, verifying where this image is coming from with a reverse image search. So I think I would answer to that person, really slow down is the message, I would say.
Yes, exactly. That's sort of the main message in all of this verifications. Basically, take the time to verify. Not everything, because it's just too much. But when something is important, actually give them the tools so that they can, and give them the understanding how relevant it is so that they actually want to, and take the time, get a few more opinions before they retreat to the one opinion that they hold on to. And I think, do we have a video? Do we have a final video?
Yeah,
we have one tiny video, and then we're actually almost out of time. This is a video that we show to the kids. It's an old ad for a newspaper called The Guardian, which some of you may know. It's an English, it's a British newspaper. And in the 1980s, they put out. Oh, have we got it?
No, yeah, we've got it. I think.
It's a lovely little video that we show the kids, which actually basically epitomizes what we points of view. It's called points of view. Yeah, there we go. 86. It's only 30 seconds long.
Can you share your screen?
And it really summarizes
an event seen from one point of view.
Yeah, well, I will just now. Sorry. Hop.
Got it.
So yeah, you see it?
To go back to the beginning.
And yeah, so that's really to make them understand how to kind of slow down everything.
An event seen from one point of view gives one impression. Seen from another point of view, it gives quite a different impression. But it's only when you get the whole picture you can fully understand what's going on.
There we go. Such a short thing, and the kids all get it. It's such a lovely way of summarizing what we try and tell them. Have we got it?
Yeah. Okay. So I'll put the link maybe in the chat box so you can also see it, and maybe we can come back to the presentation. It will come back. There it is.
Okay, and we're actually at the end. We'd love to share, especially once our own toolbox, which we've sorted and which we've tried to make very sort of intuitive and easy to use. When that's ready, we'd love to share that with you. Maybe there's a way of sharing it with the eTwinning community. We'd also love to send you the bits of the PDF that are in English so that you see the resources, but we actually hope that you've already seen quite a lot of links here that that you can use, and actually just got some kind of sense of how easy and how fun actually it can be to talk about this stuff in the classroom. So thank you very much. Do please get in touch with us. If you have any questions, or if you want to be added to our mailing list to be updated of our work, which would actually also include finding out when our toolbox is actually fully ready and functional. And it's 4 minutes past 6. But if there are any questions at all, then let us know.
Thank you so much. There's a lot of good comments.
Thank you very much.
And people were really inspired. So yeah, a lot about the links. Yes, we will share the presentation and the links to the videos in the campaign group. So don't worry, you're not going to miss a thing. And any questions so far? Because I think I had quite many questions because I find it so interesting, and because particularly when you showed the first video, and I saw there was this comment within the video that the teachers were surprised how much the students know. Have you encountered this, like these 10, 11-year-old kids, like how much they know already?
Yes. Yes, well, they know this is it. This is the thing, is they have this innate understanding. They just don't necessarily apply it to information. So they understand. They can talk at very great length about clickbait. We filmed once a classroom session where there was the most eloquent discussion about clickbait. It was really amazing, and yet they still all fell, by the way, for the Cobra story. Not all of them, but more than half of them believed the Cobra story. So, the teachers often say, well, they know all this stuff. Now we just need to, as we said, to direct their gaze. Where can you see me? There you go. They're looking at their digital playground and at their Snapchat and at their Instagram, and we need to use what they already understand and just direct it into the world of whatever you're teaching. For us, it's news because we're journalist led, but for you, it may
Thank
be
you. There was a
biology or math
question
or
in
politics or
the
whatever it
chat
might be.
about these lie detector journalists in other countries. So I don't know if you want to reiterate about your network and how teachers in other countries are there available, like the toolbox or the journalists.
Well, material is available whenever, because we're not creating any materials as such. So we try to gather them, and any language is actually interesting for everybody. Now the lie detectors project is only developed in at the moment in Belgium, Germany, and Austria, but we plan to develop soon in other countries.
Yeah.
Um,
But basically, the way the project is conceived is that it should be easy to translate from one country to another, from one journalistic landscape to another, and from one language to another. So we're already active in 3 different languages. We've only been around since we were founded not even 2 years ago, so things are moving quite quickly. We've been working, if you could see behind us, you can't really see, but we have enormous amounts of work going on to actually develop kind of systems that allow us to expand more quickly so that we can get to a lot of different countries. And we've had actually requests from Ukraine, Italy, Greece, from a lot of the countries that you teachers are from. We've had requests from, and we hope to be able to expand very soon. In some countries, we think that journalistic freedom may not be quite where it needs to be for this to be easy to do, or to have enough journalists who can do this. And there we're thinking also of working with librarians as the guardians.
Amazing.
Of,
so we can look forward to
and,
having a
and
bigger network, hopefully, because I think there's a lot of demand. I haven't seen any other questions, but I have a maybe the last question, because we talked, like you showed a lot about the pictures, but I'm thinking about the next step, which is video, because I have seen on social media now these, what do you call it, like doctored videos. For example, there was this one video recently with some ducks crossing the street, and apparently that was fake and it looked so real. So are you going to somehow involve in, like, with the stories and pictures and also videos? And because they, at the moment, they look so real.
Let me so that's something that some people call deep fakes. Have you heard that? It's also called deep fakes. And you also have Obama saying crazy things, and it just looks like he's talking, but it's actually all computer imagery. There is a wonderful, actually EU-funded project called InVid. I'm just putting it there. I don't even know what the website is. What is the website? Is it? It's called InVid, INVID. It's more complicated to use, but if for any of you who are very technically minded, you can Google InVid, INVID, and you can download their plugin. I've been taught how to use this, but it's quite complicated, which is why we haven't shown it here. But there are people who can train people up, and I think there might even be online. I'm not sure. Actually, one of our collaborators, one of our moderators, actually created InVid, and InVid is exactly that, Asi, which you were asking about.
yeah,
there we go. Exactly, Asi. Thank you very much. Exactly. It's brilliant. It's fantastic because it's a search engine that allows you to search video and photo and everything, and it searches not only. It's a plugin that works not only with Google or Yahoo or whatever. It actually searches something like, I think, 8 or 9 different search engines, including Chinese search engines and all sorts of things that we would normally never bother check. And the results are really fabulous. But then again, when you say the deep fakes, I know people are very worried about deep fakes. I actually think that in the end, some of these things you really can check, not just technologically, but actually just by using that very simple list from IFLA, from the International Federation of Librarians Associations, and other equal, similar ones. Double check, do a search, go to a source that you trust, think a little bit, check your bias, that sort of thing. So no, you're right. I mean, the fakes are getting more and more sophisticated, and we have to just equip people with a critical thinking skill.
Thanks a lot. That's actually a good thing, that extension. I might check it myself, because I find, especially with these videos, because we're not used to videos being faked so well, and that's very useful. I think, we're already 10 minutes past 6. So, so you have the contact details there in the slide. If you have any other questions to the experts from lie detectors, you can contact them there. And I will put the recording and the slides, and I think we have a lot of materials that we shared during this online seminar, so I'll put them all into the campaign group. So everyone go ahead and join there. And in the campaign group, actually, one of the activities is that you can create your own checklist on how do you do fake news, and you can share it with us. So I think this is you can already have a look from this presentation, and just trying to adapt what you think is what are your teachers' main tools when teaching these things. So that's very good information for the teachers as well. So a lot of thanks from me. I'm just